Hey guys, Toby Mathis here, and today we're going to go over, and I'm going to read this title to make sure I get it perfect: The Biblical Way to Wealth, Why Pastors Should Teach Investing. And I have Pastor Mike Almeyda here with me, and we're just going to dive right on in. First off, it sounds weird. People always have this mental thing about like, hey, if it has to do with the Bible, there's money can't be involved. So, what do you say to those folks first off, Mike?
Oh gosh, there's a passage in scripture that most people often miss or misconstrue. They often say that that money is the root of all evil, but in fact, what the Bible actually says is that the love of money is the root of all evil. If you actually look in scripture, especially after Jesus ascended to heaven and the church was birthed, they pooled their resources together, right? Whether it was clothing, it was food, any type of sustenance, they pulled it together. And the reality is, I don't care what type of organization you are, especially with the church, it takes resources to run any type of organization. So if you don't have a plan to build wealth or be a good steward of wealth, it's going to be very hard to run an organization, and the church is no different.
Well, this leads well into the second question, which is why should pastors teach this? Like, why would anybody? I'm not saying pastors, ministers, or anybody that's part of an organization. Maybe you run a gym; it doesn't matter. But why would you teach this to the people that are in your community?
It's one of the most challenging things that people face in terms of relationships or whatnot. People always have challenges with money, and it's a very trivial concept, right? Dealing with money is very trivial. Most people make it super complicated, but in everything that you do in life, you're always going to have to deal with money at some point. And why not learn the proper way to deal with money? Why not learn simple principles that can allow you to build wealth, to get out of debt, to be a good steward, and to be trusted with more resources over time? I think it's an important thing. I wish the education system would take these principles and teach it to the next generation. And because they don't, it's our responsibility to step up and do that. I personally feel obligated, not only for my family, but for my community, to be there and to help people learn how to be good stewards of their resources.
Okay, so you've taught some courses, and again, there's I'm sure there's tons out there. You happen to teach my favorite, which is based on a book I wrote. But what was the result? And so, like, if I'm a pastor out here and I'm listening to this and I'm watching, why should they take note? What was the result that you achieved? And maybe you could explain it a little bit about what it meant for your group.
Sure. So the course that we built is called Infinity Investing. Obviously, Toby produced this several years ago, and I want to take a step back of why I decided to do this. I was in my prayer time, and shortly after I became a pastor, I was really asking the Lord, how can I help my community? How can I really dive in and impact them? And the word that kept pressing into me was stewardship. And immediately I started to reflect on what I learned through Infinity Investing. Both me and my wife and my family have learned what we've taught our son. And it's the principles in there. They're simple, great principles. And what really stood out to me was that a lot of them are based on scripture. And so I felt compelled that why don't I go through, read the book again, and find those places where I can actually tie it back to scripture and put it from a biblical perspective so people who might be in the secular world can actually see it from a different perspective. And so last year we launched the first iteration of that. And there are a few things I want to highlight that really stood out to me. In fact, stood out to the senior pastor because he's the one that highlighted it to me. And he said, I don't know if this is your course or not, but what I can see is that the people in our church family who habitually had been asking the church for money often are now tithing. So instead of asking the church for money, they're actually providing the church with money. And to me, that's a huge deal. And then he said, and for those who are tithing, I happen to notice that those that are in your class that you're teaching, they're tithing more. And so for me, I instantly knew that the principles that they learned and took to heart, they started applying them because the simple math, the law of reaping and sowing, take 10%, in the Bible, it says take 10% of your resources and donate that. And I know a lot in the book, it talks about time or money or resources. And I really put an emphasis on, resources in general. And a lot of the members took it to heart. And not only that, but they also saw fruit in their own lives. Much of the feedback that I received was I had a group of realtors that participated in. Obviously, I know a lot about real estate, and they were like, "Man, I didn't know that you could totally take your stocks and your shares and treat them like real estate." So, seeing folks who have some investing experience have aha moments, as well as people who had no experience in investing at all, but incrementally starting to build, whether it's buying a single share, the impact was profound all across the board. Profound so much that we recently were launching a second iteration of this in our church starting this year in 2025 as well.
So what did you teach? Like, could you break it down? Was it like a 1 day, 1 month, 2 months? What did you actually teach? How much of a time commitment did it cost them money? All those good things.
Absolutely. The one thing I'll say to everybody listening on here, especially if you're a pastor, if you're going to do this, you can't put a price on it. You can't charge, right? It's part of giving back. And that was my one deal with this is I wanted to give back without expecting anything in return. It's part of the laws of reaping and sowing and part of the things you talk about in your book as well. But the way we broke it down is we built a syllabus over the course of 12 weeks. And in the 12 weeks, we cover all the chapters in Infinity Investing. And each week we would spend an hour together where the syllabus has a series of up to 10 questions that get sent out to the audience a week before we meet. And so they have a week to look over, do the reading, answer some of the self-reflective questions. And then when we would meet on that Wednesday night of the week, we would come together in a group and have open dialogue and discussion, getting different perspectives on how the individuals understood what they read, and then talk about it amongst the group to get different perspectives. And what I found is that group environment, that setting really fostered good collaboration. It really felt people coming shoulder to shoulder with each other and sharing their successes, sharing their aha moments, sharing the challenges, sharing the things that they didn't quite understand. And it really started to sustain a stronger community. And I believe our church family has grown more tight knit because of that experience.
That's interesting. And I just want to reiterate, I believe strongly that we don't charge for this type of education for institutions like the churches. If somebody wants to get a free version of Infinity Investing, they can just type in free book into the comments. Just type in free book and we'll send you a link and you can share it with anybody you want to. It's Infinity Investing was a gold medal winner, a National Book Award winner, a Amazon bestseller, and we continue. You can go find it on Amazon. It still sells very well. It's been translated into a few languages. But for you guys, since you've gotten this far, just type in free book and we'll send you a link for the PDF. And then we'll discuss how you can implement what Mike is teaching with your group as well. But what I really want to dive into is how it benefited your church specifically. So you mentioned that you're not having to provide resources. You sounded like maybe it brought some people together. Is the community actually communicating and talking about finances now too? Like, is there some level of excitement? Maybe there's people that are saying, "Hey, this is actually fun." I'm just curious as to what you've seen.
Oh gosh, it's so funny you mentioned that, Toby, because every time I show up on Sunday, I constantly have folks that were in a group come up and start asking me questions, whether it's about cryptocurrency or it's about stocks or it's about real estate. And I noticed that it's not just one person or one group. I've had that conversation multiple times, and it encourages me because, again, those things aren't frequently talked about in church. You don't ever hear pastors talk about this, but it's foundational. It's part of everyday life. Most of the people that I shepherd in my church, they have real life, right? And so they're going to go through ups and downs. And again, financial challenges are usually one of those things that impact a church. The real driver when I was thinking about doing this, I asked myself the question, how do you grow a church? How can you really grow a church? And I realized that if you teach good stewardship and they have great success with it, what tends to happen is they share those results with people in their circle of trust.
Mhm.
And the next logical question is, well, how did you learn how to do all this stuff? And if they could say, I learned that at my church, guess what? That means the church is going to grow. And quite frankly, that happened a few times that we had some folks come to some of our Sunday messages and Sunday services because somebody in the group had great results. And when they asked that question of where did you learn how to do this, they said, well, there's a pastor at my church that teaches it. You should come. And so now today we have folks not only in our in-person church body, but we also have folks who watch our services online. In fact, I just got a note from somebody who attended one of the Infinity Investing trainings that does small groups at their church. They want to find out how to do this. So they're going to be a part of this class. And again, if anybody is listening to this, if you certainly want to learn how to do this at your church, we're more than happy to help you, provide resources, and show you how to do it. So overall, Toby, I would say that the impact has been profound. I think people who, from their mentality, never thought they would ever be able to invest because they didn't have the skill set, they didn't have the expertise, the education, they weren't brought up in the right family. It just doesn't happen to people like me, is constantly what I heard. What we've been able to teach them are skills that they now are 100% in control of. And they learn that even if it's just $1, they can still invest and find ways to build generational wealth, even if it's a single dollar at a time.
I love it. Now, I just want to make sure that we are being very, very clear. There's not a financial commitment. You didn't charge your people anything to learn how to go through your program and learn how to invest. And by the way, Infinity Investing works on real estate, stocks. We teach you a methodology for building wealth over time. It is not you're dumping a bunch of money and you're following a guru. It's real simple for me. I'm a tax attorney. I've been doing this for 28 years. I have tons of clients that are investors, and I can see who makes money and who doesn't. Like anybody else can lie to you. I see their taxes. I see their balance sheet. So I know who actually makes money and who doesn't. And what it looks like to have consistent perpetual wealth. And I just stole all their ideas and wrote a book about it. So that's all it is I don't have an original thought. I'm teaching what actually worked for tens of thousands of other people, because at my firm, we work with tens of thousands of people, and I can see who's successful over a 10-year, 20-year stretch. And they all do the same type of stuff. And so I just basically distilled it and said, here's the simple strategies that they all do that seems to work consistently over time. It's kind of boring, requires some discipline. You broke it down and taught it over 12 weeks, because I think there's 12 chapters in the book or something like that. Probably we do a chapter a week. And you're going to realize that it's just stories. And once you realize, hey, nobody's different than me, it was easy to plug into play. Um, Mike, can I put your information or a link so that people can reach out to you in case they want their folks to go through the same program, or in case they want to just talk to you to see whether
Absolutely.
it's right for their church?
Absolutely. And I will tell you this, Toby, since you mentioned it simple, another piece of feedback that I got is I've had some members that have gone through other type of financial classes in their church. And the consistent message and feedback I received is that these other classes taught us how to maybe get out of debt, but that was it. And after we did that, there was really no next step. What they said about infinity investing is not only did they help us do that, but there was a simple plan on how to not only do that, but also build wealth at the same time. And again, they kept saying, this is so simple. I mean, it's so simple. And of course, when you tie scripture into it, it gets them even more excited because it's scriptural principles that they're laws that if you follow those laws, you're going to reap the benefits of it. So I can't say it enough. You said it's simple. It's really simple. I don't think there's any other program out there that would take those principles and lay them out the way that infinity investing does.
Well, I appreciate that. But of course, at the end of the day, it's simple, not easy, right? It's simple. Eat, move more, eat less, and you'll tend to be fit, but it's hard for us to do it as human beings. So, so we could teach it and then we can encourage it. But at the end of the day, the individual has to actually implement it. So I'm going to put your information in here so that people, especially in the church community, I'm a strong believer in this, right? Went to Catholic school. I was Episcopalian growing up, but I went to Catholic high school, Catholic college, Catholic law school, Jesuit. So, And I happen to believe that you can do a lot of good in society. You don't need to do the rah rah and feel like you're, show everybody how great you are. But at the end of the day, you can't give somebody a glass of water from an empty pitcher. You have to learn how to generate wealth for yourself so you can bless other people. That's my personal belief. So that's what I try to teach. I think that it works in this situation, that you can grab onto it and you can teach it to anybody without them having that weird guilt. Like my problem with Catholics is a lot of times they have this guilt about wealth. They feel bad about having nice things. And I'm always like, it's never bad. Just, it's like you said, it's the love of money. When you start to measure that above all else,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of a miserable existence. We call them rich, miserable bastards at that point, right? They have no spiritual fulfillment. They're pretty miserable people, and they don't know why. It's because they're missing that other component. But if you have the ability to be wealthy, please bless other people with it. You can't do it the other way around, right? You can't be poor really and bless other people financially.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough. So absolutely apply this. Mike, I want to ask you just a couple more questions if I
Yes, sir.
can, and then I'll let you go. What were your biggest takeaways after going through the program with your people?
One of the biggest takeaways for me is recognizing how many people in society think that financial independence and being wealthy is beyond their means. It was a real eye opener to see people in my community, in my church family, think that they couldn't do it. And when I hear challenges like that, it fires me up. It ignites me a passion to go deeper and further. And at the end of the 12 weeks, which by the way, at the end of the 12 weeks, we met on a monthly basis just to talk about how people were taking those concepts and applying it. But when I asked a lot of those same questions at the end of the year, especially in December where we met for the last time, the mindset was so much different than it was when we started. The people that didn't think generational wealth was a possibility for them were now talking from a perspective of how can I build generational wealth instead of if I can build generational wealth. That mindset shift was so profound. And again, why do I believe that happened? Because they applied the principles, like you said. This is simple stuff, but actually every week, looking at your finances, making a decision to follow the 10%, 30, 30, 30 model, making a decision to think differently, making a decision to invest differently, making a decision to think about yourself differently. When you compound those different types of responses over a longer period of time, things change. You build habits, you build routines. And so staying connected in that community of encouragers following these principles over 12 months, all of a sudden, those people, their mindsets have shifted and they've changed. And I want to say just about everybody that participated in the first go around is also participating again. Why? They recognize that there's a lot of content in the book, there's a lot of content in the course. It makes sense to go through it again because when you go through it a second time, things will start to materialize, things will start to click, and you'll get a better understanding of reading it through the second time. I mean, every time I do this, I read the book again myself. And every time I read it again, repetition's the mother of skill. You learn something different. You get a bigger appreciation. But that was the biggest takeaway for me, Toby, is to watch the mindset shift. Because if you can teach people how to fish instead of feeding them fish, you're going to feed them for a lifetime. And that's what our plan is with bringing Infinity Investing to the church.
Well, I'll leave you with two thoughts. It was old Andrew Carnegie, who the richest man in the world at one point. He says that millionaires are trustees of the poor. Some people are just really bad with money. So if you have the ability to make it, you have a duty to society to make a lot of it and to bless other people. And then the other folks that are the ones that say money can't buy you happiness. Well, I just say you haven't given enough away, because if you want true joy when you're helping other people, it's tough to be miserable. So I'll leave you guys with that. Mike, I'll make sure that people can reach out if they're a church pastor. I don't care if it's a knitting group, you could still apply this in any setting. And yes, Mike and I, like Mike especially, because I can't say takes it from a biblical perspective. I teach the principle. Mike has put it in a format to where you could teach it to your church. reach out and we can show you how to duplicate it in your church. Never a cost. We'll share with you the materials so that you can go out there and apply it. There's nothing to buy ever. There is a community, there is an infinity investing course and all that stuff, but we're going to teach you to do this to where you don't have to pay anything, so that you can apply it and that you can help your group over time develop the financial habits to be successful. And it helps that group, and especially when you start realizing and that hey, wait a second, everybody's told me that I can't do these things. When you realize they're wrong, and that actually you can, that's kind of a moment of a lot of people, the trajectory changes, and that sounds to me like that's what you've had,
Yes, sir.
which makes me feel good. Mike, anything else?
No, just I can't speak highly enough. If this is something that interests you, if you want change in your church, be the change for your church.
Yep. So I'll put Mike's information down there. At the same time, if you want a e-version of the Infinity Investing, just type in free book down below. We'll send you a link so that you can get a free book. And then if you're a church group and you want the hardbound covers, reach out to Mike. We do give cases of books to certain groups. We want to make sure that you're serious and that you're going to teach it. And then we'll do everything we can to get the resources into your hands so that you can be successful. And again, just thanks. And if you know anybody who would benefit from this information, please share it. Otherwise, like and subscribe. It helps my algorithm out on the channel, believe it or not, so we can reach more people. And good luck. And thanks, Mike, for joining me.
My pleasure. Thanks, Toby.